Okay, let's unpack this deep dive. We're looking at some really interesting source material today.
Yeah, it all revolves around that pretty provocative claim Vice President JD Vance made back in May 25.
Right, the one calling artificial intelligence communist technology, and then setting it against crypto as, like, the freedom tech.
Exactly. And even though Vance apparently admitted it was a slight overstatement, he doubled down, saying there's a fundamental element of truth there.
So our job here really is to dig into that assertion, just based on the material we have in front of us. So, is AI actually communist tech?
And how does AI bias, which is the sources definitely talk about, fit into this whole political picture?
Yeah, and the sources bring up history too. Are we just seeing the same old pattern? New tech gets labeled, gets caught in the, ideological crossfire.
We're going to try and cut through the rhetoric, look at what the sources say about AI, about politics, and why this whole framing actually matters for you.
Okay, so first off, the way Vance's statement is presented in the material seems key.
Absolutely. It's framed less as a deep technical dive into AI itself and more like a strategic political statement, right?
It makes sense given the context, speaking at a Bitcoin conference. Targeting a specific audience?
Seems like it. Aiming at, crypto folks, conservatives, maybe people already a bit wary of big tech. The sources suggest it's about drawing clear lines in the sand, ideologically speaking.
So the material sees this mainly as politics, not tech analysis.
Pretty much. I mean, the sources define AI in pretty basic terms. It's tool, algorithms, data, crunching numbers.
Right, not something with its own built-in political beliefs like, say, communism, which is a whole socio-political system.
Exactly. The math behind AI, it's not based on Marx or state control of production,
Okay, but what about the bias? The sources mention studies finding bias, sometimes leaning left, in AI models. Doesn't that complicate things, calling it just a neutral tool?
It does, yeah. And that brings up a really important point the sources tackle.
Yeah.
Where does that bias actually come from? Well, the material's pretty clear that this documented bias isn't some kind of core ideology baked into the AI.
So it's not the AI being communist or anything else?
No. Instead, it seems to come from flaws in the data it learns from, or maybe the way the algorithms are designed, basically embedding human biases.
So if the data reflects society's existing biases, race, gender, whatever, the AI just learns those.
That's what the sources describe. It's framed as a technical problem, an ethical challenge, rooted in the human side of things, the data, the development.
Any examples in the sources?
They mention things like the Compass tool used in criminal justice, which apparently flagged black defendants as higher risk more often, or an old Amazon hiring tool that was biased against women.
So outcomes of bias data, not an AI pushing an agenda.
Right. And the sources even note that this perceived political leaning in some models can often be tweaked or adjusted, which suggests it's more about configuration in data, not some fixed ideology.
It's interesting then how the sources link this to history, this whole idea of labeling tech. We've seen this movie before.
According to the material, absolutely. History's full of new tech getting framed ideologically, often using fear. The sources mention moral panics around past inventions.
Like what?
Well, maybe not exactly the same, but think Cold War Red Scares. The sources highlight how calling something communist back then was just a really effective way to discredit it, whether it fit or not.
So the suggestion is this claim about AI might be tapping into that old playbook, leveraging that kind of historical fear.
That seems to be the interpretation offered, yeah. Recycling old tactics. Now, the sources do acknowledge that authoritarian states like China use AI heavily for control and surveillance.
Right, that's undeniable.
But they argue that's about how a specific political system uses or misuses the tech. It's not proof that AI itself shares that ideology. Vance's rhetoric, according to these sources, kind of blurs that line.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. What's the bottom line for you, the listener? Our dive suggests this AI as communist tech label is probably more political strategy than about what AI actually is.
Yeah, the sources indicate the real documented biases in AI. They come from messy data, human design flaws reflecting society's issues, not some secret ideology inside the machine.
And history, as laid out here, shows this pattern again and again. New tech gets demonized, gets used as a political football. Echoes of the Cold War, maybe?
And there's a clear political purpose to this labeling, right? You could use it to attack rivals, maybe boost tech you prefer, like crypto in this case, and play on those old anxieties.
But the risk, the sources imply, is that this kind of talk distracts us. It pulls focus from the real, tricky challenges with AI.
Exactly. Things like how we govern it, how we protect privacy, who's accountable when things go wrong. The real worry isn't AI having an ideology based on this material. It's about how we build it and how we use it.
Which leaves us with a big question for you to think about. If we get bogged down in arguing about labels, about whether AI is communist or capitalist or whatever, instead of working on the practical challenges,
Could democratic societies end up falling behind? Could we lose influence in shaping responsible AI? Maybe leaving the field open to those who'd misuse it for control. Something to consider.